Part 1. The house she didn't want to return to. Marina hadn't set foot in her hometown for 3 years. She had built a new life far away. New job, new friends, and a stubborn determination never to go back. But everything shattered the moment a letter arrived in her mailbox. It was just a folded piece of paper with a few words in her father's handwriting. "Marin, come home. We need to talk. It's important." That was all. No love, Dad. No explanation. The brevity was almost more unsettling than if he'd told her someone had died. Now, she stood on the dirt road that led to the old wooden house on the edge of the lake. The same tall pine trees loomed around it. The same peeling paint clung stubbornly to the walls. It looked exactly as it had when she was a teenager, yet it felt wrong, as if the air here was heavier. Her father opened the door before she even knocked. "Marina," he said, his voice flat. "Hi, Dad," she answered, forcing a smile. She hadn't seen him in years, and his face seemed sharper, more worn. Inside, the smell hit her. A strange mix of wood smoke, dust, and something else, something damp. Her mother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an old apron, and avoided meeting Marina's eyes. The last person to appear was her younger brother, Dima. At 16, he was taller than she remembered, his shoulders broader, but the way he looked at her, cold, almost hostile, made her stomach twist. Dinner was quiet, too quiet. The clink of silverware was the only sound. No one asked her about her life. No one explained why she had been called back. That night, Marina lay in her childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling. She told herself she was imagining things, that the tension was just old family awkwardness. But sometime after midnight, a sound pulled her out of her thoughts. It was faint at first, like soft, careful footsteps. Above her, on the attic floor, she froze. The attic was supposed to be locked. Slipping out of bed, she crept up the narrow staircase. The old wooden steps groaned under her weight. When she pushed open the attic door, the smell of dust and mothballs filled her nose. Moonlight streamed through a small round window, illuminating boxes stacked in the corners. Something drew her to an old cardboard box near the far wall. Inside were piles of photographs, some yellowed and curling at the edges. Her fingers stilled on one picture. It was a family photo. She was in it, maybe 10 years old, standing between her parents. Dima was a toddler in her mother's arms, and next to her father stood another girl. A girl with dark hair, pale skin, and a shy smile. She looked about her age in the photo. Marina's breath caught. She didn't know this girl. She had never seen her before. The floorboards creaked behind her. She spun around, but the attic was empty. Only the moonlight and the silence remained. Part 2. Secrets beneath the surface. Marina barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the girl from the photograph. That faint smile, those dark eyes, the strange way she seemed to belong in the picture, but didn't. By morning, she had convinced herself she'd simply ask about it at breakfast. But when she stepped into the kitchen, the air was tense again. Her father sat at the table, coffee steaming in his chipped mug. Her mother moved about the stove, not looking at anyone. She slid the photo onto the table beside her father's cup. "Who is this?" He didn't even glance at it. "Just an old picture." "She's in our family photo," Marina pressed. "I don't know her. Did she live here? Was she a cousin?" Her father's eyes narrowed just slightly. "It's not important." Her mother turned sharply, spatula in hand. "Don't dig into the past, Marina. Some things are better left alone." The finality in her tone made it clear the conversation was over. The rest of the morning dragged in silence. Dima barely acknowledged her, but when their parents went outside to tend to the woodpile, he lingered in the hallway, leaning against the wall. "If you want answers," he said without looking at her, "ask the lake." She frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" He just shrugged, pushed himself off the wall, and walked away. By evening, she couldn't shake the words from her mind. She found Dima in his room, sitting cross-legged on the floor, sketching in a worn notebook. "About what you said earlier," she began. He cut her off. Meet me at midnight, by the shore. The moon was high and the air bit at her skin as they crept down the narrow trail to the water. The lake stretched out before them, black and glassy, reflecting the silver glow of the moon. The pines loomed on either side, their shadows long and jagged across the ground. This is where it happened, Dima whispered. What happened? She asked. He kept his eyes on the water. Her name was Lena. She drowned here when I was little, but it wasn't an accident. The cold air seemed to press in around them. What do you mean? Dima's voice dropped even lower. Almost a whisper carried on the breeze. Every autumn, something happens here. Animals disappear. People drown. Always when the moon is full. Dad says it's just bad luck. But I've seen things. Shadows in the water. Heard voices. Marina stared at the still surface of the lake. It didn't move, didn't ripple, as if it were listening. You're telling me this thing killed her? She asked. I'm telling you, Dima said, that once you see it, it doesn't stop watching you. A sound broke the silence. Faint, like a splash somewhere out in the middle of the water. Marina's heart skipped. Dima grabbed her arm. Don't look too long, he said. That's how it pulls you in. They hurried back through the trees, but Marina couldn't shake the feeling that something in the lake had noticed her, and that it wasn't finished. Part 3: Letters That Shouldn't Exist. Marina woke up late the next morning, her head heavy from the restless night. She couldn't stop thinking about the lake, about the way the black water seemed to breathe under the moonlight, about the faint splash that didn't feel like just a fish. She tried to convince herself Dima was just being dramatic, a bored teenager telling ghost stories. But the way he said once you see it, it doesn't stop watching you. That stuck like a hook in her mind. The kitchen was empty when she came downstairs. The muffled sound of chopping would carry through the window. Her father outside, splitting logs for the stove. She poured herself coffee, the bitter steam curling upward, and wandered into the living room. The house had barely changed since she'd last lived here. Same dark wooden furniture, same rug with the faded red and gold pattern. The old grandfather clock in the corner still ticked in that slow, deliberate rhythm. She almost didn't notice the cabinet door under the stairs hanging slightly open. Her parents had always kept that cabinet locked. As a child, she'd assumed it was full of boring adult things. Tax papers, maybe old tools. But now, curiosity burned hotter than caution. She crouched and opened it wider. Inside was a jumble of boxes, bundles of yellowing newspaper, and at the very back, a worn, leather-bound bundle tied with twine. She pulled it out, brushing away dust. The leather creaked in her hands, and the faint scent of mildew rose from it. She untied the twine. Inside were letters, dozens of them, folded neatly, their envelopes brittle with age. The first one she opened was dated October 2nd, 2005. The handwriting was neat but rushed, as though the writer's hand shook. Andre still refuses to finish what we started. I told him it's getting worse, the dreams, the whispers. Lena wakes up screaming every night. I can't do this alone. You promised you'd help me. If you don't, the lake will take her like it took the others. The signature at the bottom made Marina's skin prickle. Irina. She read the next letter. Her eyes are changing. She doesn't play with the other children anymore. She just sits at the shore, talking to the water. I caught her with the amulet again. She says the woman told her to keep it safe. Please, if you care about us, come before the full moon. Marina's heart pounded. Letter after letter spoke of Lena, of strange behavior, of keeping the lake calm. The dates stretched over 2 years until they abruptly stopped. She had never heard of Irina. She had never known a Lena who drowned at the lake. And Andre, she froze. The name was familiar. It was her uncle. But she'd only ever heard his name once, in passing, when she was very small. She was still sitting there on the floor, surrounded by letters, when the shadow fell over her. What are you doing? Her mother's voice was sharp, tight. Marina looked up. Who's Irina? Who's Lena? And why are there letters about? Her mother stepped forward quickly, snatching the letter from her hands. You shouldn't be looking at these. They were hidden under the stairs. You kept them. I kept them because your father would have burned them if he found them. That caught Marina off guard. Why? Her mother's eyes flicked toward the window, where the lake shimmered faintly through the trees. Because some things can't be solved. They can only be survived. Before Marina could press further, her father's voice called from outside. Her mother stuffed the letters back into the bundle, shoved them into the cabinet, and pushed the door shut. The conversation was over. That night, Marina lay in bed, staring at the ceiling again. She could hear her parents' voices drifting from the kitchen below, low, tense. Every so often, Dima's voice cut in, then was quickly silenced. She decided to get some air. The hallway was dark, lit only by a faint glow from the kitchen door. She slipped past it, through the back porch and into the night. The air was damp, the smell of pine thick. The moon was brighter tonight, casting long silver streaks across the lake's surface. Halfway down the path, she stopped. A figure was standing at the water's edge. Small, thin, motionless. Her breath caught. It was a girl. She wore a white dress that fluttered slightly in the breeze. Her dark hair hung over her face. In her hand was something small. A stuffed bear, its fur matted and wet. Marina's first thought was Lena. The girl slowly turned her head toward Marina. Even from 20 feet away, Marina could feel her gaze. Heavy, cold, pulling her in. Marina? A voice hissed behind her. She spun. Dima stood in the shadows, his face pale. When she looked back to the shore, the girl was gone. Only the ripples remained, spreading outward across the still water. What the hell was that? Marina whispered. Dima swallowed hard. You weren't supposed to see her yet. Part 4 chased through the pines. The silence after Dima's words felt heavier than the night air. You weren't supposed to see her yet. Marina stared at him. What do you mean yet? What's going on? Who is she? Dima glanced toward the lake. The ripples were fading now, the water stilling back into a perfect mirror. You saw her before she wanted you to. That's bad. You're not making sense, Marina snapped. I want the truth. A sound broke her words. Not from the water, from the trees. A branch cracked, sharp in the still night. Then another. Dima's eyes widened. We have to go. Now. They moved quickly, their footsteps muffled by pine needles. Marina's pulse was pounding in her ears, but she kept glancing over her shoulder. Between the trunks, she swore she saw movement. A shadow keeping pace with them. Who's following us? She hissed. Dima didn't answer. He pulled her off the trail, deeper into the forest, ducking under low branches. The air grew colder, the scent of damp earth strong. After what felt like 10 minutes of weaving through the pines, they broke into a small clearing. In the moonlight stood a shack, small, leaning slightly to one side, its roof patched with mismatched metal sheets. Marina's skin prickled. What is this place? His, Dima said simply. Before she could ask who, the door creaked open. A man stepped out. He was tall but stooped, wearing a dark coat that reached to his knees. His hair was long and unkempt, streaked with gray, and his face was half in shadow. In one hand, he held a rusted axe, the blade dulled but still heavy-looking. Dima, the man said, his voice deep and rough, like someone unused to speaking. You shouldn't have brought her here. Marina took a step back. Who? This is our uncle, Dima said quietly. Andre. Her mind reeled. This was the man from the letters. Andre's gaze moved to her, sharp and unblinking. You look like your mother. The words didn't sound like a compliment. You've been watching us, Marina said, her voice shaking. I've been watching the lake, he corrected. Someone has to. He turned and walked back toward the shack, motioning for them to follow. Inside, the air smelled of smoke, metal, and something faintly rotten. The walls were lined with shelves holding jars, some filled with murky liquid, others with bundles of herbs. In the corner, a small fire burned in a stone pit, casting flickering light over a wooden table covered in carvings. What is all this? Marina asked, scanning the strange objects. Tools, Andre said simply. For keeping it quiet. He set the axe against the wall and began rummaging through a chest. Dima moved closer to Marina and whispered, he knows more than anyone, but he's not like other people. Andre returned holding a small object. It was a pendant, a flat stone, smooth and dark, strung on a leather cord. Symbols had been scratched into its surface, worn nearly away. You saw her, Andre said. That means she's noticed you. You'll need this. He pressed the pendant into Marina's hand. It was cold, colder than the air around them, and a faint vibration pulsed from it. She's not supposed to be here anymore, Marina said, forcing herself to meet his eyes. She's where she belongs, Andre said. In the water. The problem is, she keeps trying to leave. Marina swallowed. Why? He gave a humorless smile. Because she wasn't given what she was promised. Before she could ask more, the wind outside shifted. All three of them froze. Then, from somewhere in the forest, came a long, low moan. It wasn't human. It wasn't animal. It was deep, resonant, and it made the walls of the shack tremble. Andre grabbed his axe. She's not alone tonight, he muttered. We need to move. They left the shack quickly, Andre leading, moving with surprising speed for someone his age. The forest felt different now, alive in a way that made Marina's skin crawl. The trees seemed to lean closer, the shadows thicker, the cold sharper. A rustling came from behind them, then the thud of heavy footsteps. Marina glanced back and caught a glimpse of something. A shape between the trees, hunched, almost crawling, its limbs too long. Its eyes glimmered faintly in the moonlight. Don't stop, Andre growled. They pushed deeper into the woods. The creature, whatever it was, followed, keeping just out of full view. Each time Marina thought she'd lost it, she'd catch another flicker of movement, another pair of glimmering eyes. Suddenly, Andre veered off the path, leading them down a steep slope toward the lake. The moonlight danced on the black water below. Why are we going toward it? Marina said. Because it's safer there than here, Andre said. For now. When they reached the shore, Andre pulled a small pouch from his coat and scattered a dark powder into the water. The lake hissed softly, tiny bubbles breaking the surface. The creature in the woods stopped moving. For a moment there was silence. Then, from the center of the lake, ripples began to spread. A figure rose slowly from the water, the girl in the white dress. She stood just at the edge of the shallows, her hair dripping, her empty eyes fixed on Marina. Andre stepped between them. Not yet, he said, his voice low but firm. You'll get what you want soon enough. The girl tilted her head, as if listening to something only she could hear. Then she stepped backward into the water and sank beneath the surface without a sound. Andre turned to Marina. You need to understand something. You didn't come back here because your father wanted to talk. You came back because the lake called you, and it doesn't call for nothing. Part 5, The Price of the Lake. The walk back from the shore was silent. Marina's mind spun with images of the pale girl, Lena, dripping with lake water, those hollow eyes never blinking. Andre moved ahead with the quiet certainty of someone who'd been walking these woods his whole life. Dima stayed close to her side, but he didn't speak. When they finally reached the cabin, their parents were nowhere to be seen. The clock on the wall read 2:47 a.m., but the air inside felt wrong, heavy, like before a thunderstorm. Andre shut the door and slid the latch. You should both sit, he said. Marina crossed her arms. No, you've been dancing around the truth all night. Just tell me what's going on. Why is Lena in the lake? Why did you say she wasn't given what she was promised? Andre studied her for a long moment. Then he sat heavily in the chair near the window, his eyes fixed on some memory far away. Your mother had a sister, he began. Her name was Lena. She was 16 the year it happened. Beautiful, clever, always pushing at the edges of what was allowed. She hated this place. Thought the forest was just rotting wood and the lake was a swamp pretending to be something grand. He paused, rubbing his hands together as if to warm them. But the lake, it doesn't like to be mocked. It listens. And when it chooses someone, it won't let them go. Marina frowned. Chooses them for what? To keep the balance, Andre said. Every 30 years, the lake takes someone. A life for a life. If it doesn't, it overflows. Not with water, with what's underneath. The things you saw in the trees tonight, those are the first to come through. Dima shifted uncomfortably. You're saying the monsters, they're the lake's backup plan? Andre nodded. They're hungry. The water keeps them fed, but if it dries up, if the pact breaks, they come out. And they don't stop. Marina felt her throat tighten. So Lena? She wasn't supposed to be chosen, Andre said. It was supposed to be me. The words hung in the air like frost. I was 20 back then, he continued. The lake had already marked me, but I tried to run. I thought I could trick it. The night before the full moon, Lena followed me down to the shore, yelling at me for being a coward. She got too close. I saw her reflection change before I heard the splash. By the time I got to her, she was gone. Marina's stomach churned. So it took her instead. Andre's jaw tightened. Yes, and she's been down there ever since. But she's not just dead. She's part of it now. When the lake takes someone, it keeps them. They become the voice that calls the next offering. The room seemed smaller suddenly, the shadows darker. So why is she looking at me? Marina asked. Andre looked directly at her for the first time. Because the pact ends this autumn equinox. And the lake wants someone from our bloodline. You're the right age. You're back in its reach. It's not a coincidence. The floorboards creaked overhead. Marina froze. We're alone, right? She whispered. Andre was already reaching for his axe. Not anymore. The three of them moved into the hallway. Upstairs, the sound came again. Slow, deliberate footsteps. The air grew damp and cold, the scent of algae heavy in their noses. They reached the stairs just as a shadow passed across the top landing. Water dripped from somewhere unseen, pattering softly onto the wood. Then a voice. Marina. It was soft, almost kind, but impossibly close. Marina's stomach twisted. It was Lena's voice, though she'd never heard it before. Dima grabbed her arm. Don't answer. But the sound of her name pulled at her, like a tide in her chest. She found herself stepping forward before she realized it. Her foot on the first stair. Andre's hand clamped down on her shoulder. Basement. Now. They moved quickly, shutting the heavy trapdoor behind them. The basement was low-ceilinged, lined with shelves of old tools and glass jars filled with cloudy liquid. In the center stood a stone basin filled with black water. This is how we talk to it without going to the shore, Andre said, kneeling beside the basin. He took a knife from his belt, pricked his thumb, and let a drop of blood fall into the water. It spread like smoke beneath the surface. The water began to ripple, though there was no breeze. And then, faintly, Lena's face appeared, pale, blurred, her hair floating as if she were still submerged. You're running out of time, she said, her lips barely moving. If she won't come to me, I'll come to her. Marina stepped forward despite herself. What do you want from me? Lena's expression softened. Only what was promised. A life for a life. Let me take yours, and the rest will be safe. Marina's voice shook. And if I refuse? The water darkened. Then they'll all drown, one by one, until you're the last. The image vanished, leaving only the still, black water. Andre stood. You have until the equinox to decide. But don't fool yourself. She's already inside your head. That's how it begins. Marina felt dizzy. There has to be another way. There is, Andre said grimly. But it means breaking the pact. And that means facing everything the lake has been holding back for generations. Dima looked between them. If we did that, could we save Lena? Andre's gaze hardened. No one comes back from the lake. Not as they were. The sound of footsteps overhead grew louder, faster, now accompanied by the creak of the front door. Something was inside the cabin again. Andre grabbed his axe, nodded to the side door, and they slipped out into the freezing night. The forest was thick with fog now, swirling low over the ground. Shapes moved in it, tall, thin, wrong. Every time Marina blinked, they seemed closer. They didn't stop until they reached the old watchtower at the edge of the property. Andre barred the door behind them and set a lantern on the floor. "You two will stay here until morning," he said. "I'll keep watch outside." "You're going out there?" Marina asked. He gave a humorless smile. "The lake and I have unfinished business." That night, Marina lay awake, listening to the sounds outside. The shifting fog, the distant splash of water, the faint hum of something calling her name from far away. She knew Andre was right. The lake had chosen her, and the equinox was only 9 nights away. Part 6, Breaking the Pact. The fog didn't lift with the sunrise. Instead, it thickened, curling in heavy tendrils around the watchtower. From the small upper window, Marina could barely see the line of pine trees 20 meters away. Dima sat beside her, legs pulled to his chest, staring at nothing. "Do you think he's still alive?" he asked finally. Marina didn't answer. She hadn't heard Andre's voice once since he'd stepped into the mist. No crunch of boots, no thud of his axe. Only the faint lap of water somewhere deep in the trees. A sound broke the silence. Slow footsteps circling the tower. They were heavier than a human's, dragging slightly, like something pulling itself along. Marina held her breath. Dima's hand found hers. Then came the whisper. "Marina." It was Lena's voice, warm and coaxing. "It's easier if you don't fight." Dima's eyes widened. "She's in the fog." The door at the base rattled, gently at first, then harder. The wood groaned, the hinges squealing under the strain. "She can't get in," Dima whispered. But Marina wasn't so sure. The fog itself seemed to press against the walls, seeping in through tiny cracks. It carried the scent of wet stone and algae. A sound broke the silence. Faint, like a splash somewhere out in the middle of the water. Marina's heart skipped. Dima grabbed her arm. "Don't look too long," he said. "That's how it pulls you in." They hurried back through the trees, but Marina couldn't shake the feeling that something in the lake had noticed her, and that it wasn't finished. Part 3, Letters That Shouldn't Exist. Marina woke up late the next morning, her head heavy from the restless night. She couldn't stop thinking about the lake, about the way the black water seemed to breathe under the moonlight, about the faint splash that didn't feel like just a fish. She tried to convince herself Dima was just being dramatic, a bored teenager telling ghost stories. But the way he said, "Once you see it, it doesn't stop watching you," that stuck like a hook in her mind. The kitchen was empty when she came downstairs. The muffled sound of chopping would carry through the window. Her father outside, splitting logs for the stove. She poured herself coffee, the bitter steam curling upward, and wandered into the living room. The house had barely changed since she'd last lived here. Same dark wooden furniture, same rug with the faded red and gold pattern. The old grandfather clock in the corner still ticked in that slow, deliberate rhythm. She almost didn't notice the cabinet door under the stairs hanging slightly open. Her parents had always kept that cabinet locked. As a child, she'd assumed it was full of boring adult things. Tax papers, maybe old tools. But now, curiosity burned hotter than caution. She crouched and opened it wider. Inside was a jumble of boxes, bundles of yellowing newspaper, and at the very back, a worn, leather-bound bundle tied with twine. She pulled it out, brushing away dust. The leather creaked in her hands, and the faint scent of mildew rose from it. A rustling came from behind them, then the thud of heavy footsteps. Marina glanced back and caught a glimpse of something. A shape between the trees, hunched, almost crawling, its limbs too long. Its eyes glimmered faintly in the moonlight. "Don't stop," Andre growled. They pushed deeper into the woods. The creature, whatever it was, followed, keeping just out of full view. Each time Marina thought she'd lost it, she'd catch another flicker of movement, another pair of glimmering eyes. Suddenly, Andre veered off the path, leading them down a steep slope toward the lake. The moonlight danced on the black water below. "Why are we going toward it?" Marina said. "Because it's safer there than here," Andre said. "For now." When they reached the shore, Andre pulled a small pouch from his coat and scattered a dark powder into the water. The lake hissed softly, tiny bubbles breaking the surface. The creature in the woods stopped moving. For a moment there was silence. Then, from the center of the lake, ripples began to spread. A figure rose slowly from the water, the girl in the white dress. She stood just at the edge of the shallows, her hair dripping, her empty eyes fixed on Marina. Andre stepped between them. "Not yet," he said, his voice low but firm. "You'll get what you want soon enough." The girl tilted her head, as if listening to something only she could hear. Then she stepped backward into the water and sank beneath the surface without a sound. Andre turned to Marina. "You need to understand something. You didn't come back here because your father wanted to talk. You came back because the lake called you, and it doesn't call for nothing." By morning, the lake was still. Too still. No birds, no wind. Just the black water smoking faintly. Dima stood beside her, silent. "Did it work?" he asked finally. Marina didn't answer. Deep down, she knew the pact was gone, but so was the seal. Whatever had been held back was now free to roam without the lake's permission. Somewhere in the forest, a branch cracked. Too heavy for a deer. Marina took Dima's hand. "Come on. We're not staying to find out." They walked away from the shore, the lake fading behind them. But every so often, Marina thought she heard water dripping just behind her. That night, far from the lake, she dreamed of Lena. Not in the water, but standing in the middle of the road ahead, dry, smiling. "You can't kill the lake," she said. "You can only move it."